Hello everyone, and now welcome to Game 3 in a series between Roxas's Jaegon and Dana here on Abyssal City. So far, it's been a pretty one-sided series, and we'll see whether or not Jaegon will be able to get back into this. Gonna go ahead and swap the name tiles there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the strategies as we are getting underway. SCVs and Jaegon spawning over here at what I will call the 4 o'clock position of Abyssal City. Meanwhile, Dana spawning as the pink Zerg. Zerg versus Terran. Would be surprised if any of the players change their races, as it's really felt like Dana has just been able to figure out what Jaegon's doing every step of the way, and just slowly take his time for the victory. Jaegon has not been able to do very much in the late game, and from what I've seen, it really feels like Jaegon is much more of a late game Terran player. So that's probably been his issue. He has not been able to really get any sort of serious advantage, and any advantage that he believes that he may have established is quickly all for naught, as he ends up running into a whole bunch of units. Now, if you guys have not seen this map before, then there are some similarities here between Abyssal City and Daybreak. There are these center rocks that do make the map feel much larger until they get taken down, as the units are able to simply walk straight across the map and get inside your opponent's base. Now, there are also a lot of expansions in rather closed corridors. The close expansions does give Zerg the ability to establish up 3 bases rather quickly, which will give him an advantage there. Meanwhile, it is going to be up to the Terran player to secure these 2 expansions, perhaps even placing the siege tank up on the high ground, protecting this expansion from any sort of major attack. Now, we are one base versus we are currently sitting on 2 bases versus 2 base. It is going to be a 1 Rax expand this time around. Makes a lot more sense than what we saw in the previous game, where it seemed like it was going to be a 1 Rax expand only to turn into a reactor Hellion play. And with the delay in gas, those Hellions didn't really do much, as they were just stopped by 2 queens before they could even get started. SCV is now wandering through, does spot all of this here, gonna be heading back out. Let's take a look at what's happening down here at the natural. It is gonna be double queens, and still without any Marines or any Zerglings on the field. So this is a bit of a surprise, going Zerglingless at this point, as all we see is just heavy droning. Now, this is perhaps one of the greedier builds that I've seen from Zerg, and I think the Zerg player just feels like there's not much the Terran player can do. He's had the upper hand every game, every step of the way. And with that, he feels like he could take a little bit more of a risk and try to get those early drones, and then perhaps finally get some Zerglings a little bit later on. These first 2 Zerglings are going to be reaching the field a little bit, or a much later than normal, but it is going to be with metabolic boost a little bit faster, so the Zerglings should be able to get in some decent scouting. Marines able to push out an Overlord before it gets shot down here. That is absolutely huge. Those Marines are not going to be able to do much. Oh, could they get close enough there? No. They will not be able to do so, as the Overlord is just going to continue to make its way down, perhaps try and scout from this far side instead. Alright, we are going to be going into double factory this time, and perhaps double factory will be a little bit better for the Terran. Double factory, let's see, lift off land, what's going to be happening here? There you go, there's a little bit of the swap. It is going to be Hellion siege tanks, and this really goes to show you why Hellbats are needed in the Terran arsenal. The problem has always been the fact that Hellions don't quite work too well with siege tanks. They're not quite beefy enough. They're meant for a hit and run type of unit, and once the harassment stage is gone, there's not much that they can really do. With the addition of the Hellbat, it gives a very high hit point beefy fighter to the Terran that doesn't cost any gas. We are going to be going into Blue Flame instead, though. So with Blue Flame, we may see some Zerglings getting taken down rather quickly, but we already see the answer to this with a Roach Warren coming in from the Zerg. Zerg has pretty much been one step away in every game this series. And it seems like this is just simply going to continue as we are now going into a third base. This third base, a little bit difficult to defend though for the Zerg. It takes a bit of time for the creep to make its way down, and it is rather exposed. It is exposed by this choke point here, which is easy to defend, but there's also these two rather wide choke points here and down here, making it easy for the Terran player to just perhaps run some Hellions by, get off a drive-by flaming, and then get away without any real issue. Alright, Infernal Pre-Igniter about to be completed. What is that going to really do? Not very much. Drones will still get taken down in 3 shots. Roaches don't take any additional damage. And it's going to be up to these Hellions to deal some sort of damage, but I do not believe it will be able to do so. Alright. Hellions now backing away once more. Marine simply on patrol, going back and forth. Low hit point Overlord from earlier still doing its thing, still able to scout as we are now teching the tier 2 for the Zerg. Double gas also being taken at the natural, and at least this time the Terran player is at least keeping up in terms of supply. It looks as though, oh, is he going to take down some of these creep tumors? No, he's simply just going to try and run in. That is not going to work. And there you have it, a beautiful, beautiful block by the Zerg. This front door in a beautiful location, and the Hellions were unable to squeeze through whatsoever, losing some more units very needlessly. Let's take a look down over here. It looks as though a couple of drones were taken down, but Zerg not all too worried, getting in another 10 roaches, and should be able to counter this soon. Alright, those roaches simply swarm too fast, are very beefy units, very, very strong. Are the siege tanks going to be up in time to really pummel down these roaches when they do start knocking on that front door? Factory now being added. We are going to have 3 factories in play. Blue Flame Hellions still being added to this composition. The roaches are now making their way up the ramp. The siege tanks are not yet in siege mode, and the roaches could look to deal a little bit of damage before the siege tanks do get properly set up. Here you go. The roaches simply going to be walking inside, able to deal a little bit of damage to those units, and now backing away again. Here we have it. All the roaches are regathering up. Now, oh, they see one crucial shell shock hit and decide to back off. What's happening next? We still have 4 Hellions down here. Blue Flame coupled with level 1 weapons upgrade may be enough to take down a drone, unless that natural regeneration kicks in with that +1 armor. So far, the Orbital Command now trying to position itself at the 3rd base location. It will not be able to land as there is a roach there, and until that gets cleaned up, not much is going to happen. Alright, more and more drones are going to get taken down. It looks like another one will get taken down before it does get cleaned up. 6 worker kills versus 0, but the harvester count is still 72 to 62. This has got to be very, very frustrating for the Terran. Everything that he tries to do is simply falls flat, unable to get inside, unable to do any harassment, and now with a large number of roaches in position, there's not much that he can do to really counteract this. Perhaps trying to move out with Marauders and Siege Tanks. The units that he currently has is not going to be able to handle it at all. Hellions now trying to run away. It looks like they will be able to do exactly that. Siege Tanks are in position, and one easy shot from that Siege Tank quickly pushes all of those units back there. Alright, so what's going to be happening next? Roaches, Siege Tanks, now making their way down. Are the Siege Tanks going to perhaps siege? They need a siege on the ramp, try to cover some of those SCVs, and there you have it. The Siege Tanks and the Roaches are battling it out. The Roaches actually staying around a little bit too long, and that is going to dwindle their count significantly. Army sizes, it is now about even. If you consider gas 2100, 1850, 500, 750, I believe that is about even, maybe a difference of about 100 resources or so, as we are now seeing Thors being added. So the Terran player is actually starting to make a bit of a move here. The Roaches were just simply grouped too much together, too much damage. If you can make it so that the Siege Tanks are only hitting 1 unit at a time, that means that the Siege Tanks are only dealing about 17 damage a second. Meanwhile, each roach individually itself is actually dealing 8 damage a second, so 2 roaches can then out damage a siege tank. It just really comes down to how much splash damage each of those siege tanks are able to get in. Let's take a look. We are going to be sitting on 4 bases for the Zerg. Drones are now being transferred over, and this is the slow portion of the game where Terran needs to make a move and make sure that Zerg does not run up on 8 gas. If the Zerg gets up on 8 to 10 gas, that Broodlord count is never going to fall, nor is that Infestor count going to fall. But what is this? A double starport production in addition to an already reactored starport. Are we going to be seeing mass Vikings? That is a definite possibility, and he may simply have enough Vikings to counteract his opponent here. Everything has been on the ground. All of these roaches. The Hellions now trying to fight back here. Siege tanks, Thors. The Thor going to be able to simply take down a couple of those roaches pretty quickly, as those units now backing off again. All right, here we have it. More siege tanks now trying to push in. Siege tanks, are they going to be able to do anything at all? We can see triple Vikings now being trained. The roaches trying to push forward, and they are not going to be able to do so. Once again on the run, and Terran now doing a good job with this slow mech push. SCVs are coupled here. SCVs are on auto repair as the roaches are now trying to fight back again. It does not look good for them at all. The Viking count now up to 6 with 4 more, so it will be 10 in just a moment. As here we go, in comes the Broodlords. Broodlords are now making a move, and what is going to be happening here as all of the Vikings are now in position? The Broodlords are already taking down so many of the siege tanks, and this is not going to be a good trade. The Vikings are a bit late to the party. 4 Vikings, Thors, siege tanks now trying to battle it out. And how many units are going to be coming in together? So many Vikings are here. There is going to be, what, 5 Vikings? And the Vikings, they should just be going after those Broodlords. There are a couple queens on the ground, and that is going to hurt again. And all of the work that the Terran player was able to accomplish has been for naught, as he was not able to shut down this 3rd base and has lost much of his army in the process. Taking a look at the losses, about a 2,500 resource difference there, which is not surprisingly about the same in terms of the discrepancy between these army sizes. Broodlords now making their way into this position. Command center now trying to fly into the 12 o'clock expansion location. Zerg once again has Terran on the run. This is not looking good whatsoever for the Terran player. Terran player has not been successful. All of that harassment has constantly been shut down, and when the worker kill count is in the single digits, that is simply not good for the Terran player. All right, Hellions now making a move over. Are they going to catch some Zerglings and some roaches? They are going to catch some Zerglings and some roaches, but they're now trying to back off once again to the north. Terran is simply in trouble here, as the command center coupled with Zerglings is the orbital. Yes, the orbital command center is actually going to land, and the Zerglings are going to be able to start poking at it. A bit of a surprise here. If the Zerglings were just underneath, that would have prevented that command center from landing at all. Hellions going to completely clean up all of these Zerglings with little to no effort. Down it goes, that command center, that is, as we are now upgrading to a planetary fortress. Alright, Vikings now on the Vikings, Hellions, siege tanks, army compositions, about a 25 to 3,500 resource difference here. 9 worker advantage, and I believe all the Terran player can really do is just try and mule up, strip mine this base, and hope that all of the ground army simply walks straight into these siege tanks. That is not going to happen though. Simply too many corruptors. In comes the Broodlord. Broodlord is going to clean up all of these siege tanks with little to no effort. No Thors, no Seeker missiles at all, and the Terran is just simply getting walked over here. Broodlord's so strong, no real counter at all. The Corruptor is going to clean up the rest of the Vikings. Down goes the rest of this ground army here. There's one fungal growth to add a little bit more damage, but I believe the rest of the units and this entire base will be falling in just a matter of seconds. Alright, what's going to be happening next? Are we going to get more Vikings on the way? Yes, Vikings are coming into position. Broodlords are rather slow on the field, and the planetary fortress, which is now getting repaired, um, should not fall. Vikings, Corruptors, still a massive battle here, and the Corruptors are just simply owning the skies. You can see one lone infestor trying to survive, and so many SCVs. So many SCVs are simply falling. What's going to be happening here? You can see the Planetary Fortress with already 75 kills. That twin Ibicus cannons able to deal so much damage to those broodlings, so much splash damage. SCVs now finally on the run. This base will be falling as we now see more Vikings shot out of the sky. 14 Corruptors in the air, once again going unanswered. And now we see a bit of a Hellion run by here. Now this is simply all for gas. Zerg just wants gas at this stage, and you can see that's why there's really nothing mining at the minerals. The extractors had 3 each. You can see that the Hellions are now making a move off here. This is more of a desperate attempt to try to get back into the game. The worker kill count already rising a bit though, as we are now up to 74 to 73. Army compositions are now evening out once again, so somehow the Terran has been able to reestablish this hold. The Broodlords are rather slow. Unit compositions, Corruptors and Broodlords are now going to be regrouping together once again, as we now see another large group of Hellions come in. It looks as though it is going to take down some of these drones, many of these drones, before they are able to do anything at all. Alright, Zerg now trying to come back, able to push back these Hellions again. And what is this? Army compositions. 7,600 versus 4,000. I spoke too soon. Let's take a look at the units on the field. 15 Broodlords, 11 Corruptors, and Infestors and Roaches to add insult to injury. Alright, the Hellions may try to make a move here, perhaps take down some of these units. There is nothing really to take down. Even only, 3 drones on gas, and they're just trying to shut down the gas again. More drones are going to be slipping by. Oh, nope. All of them do get taken down, and the Hellions could just patrol right here and pick off drones that try to make their way over. Broodlords are now doing a bit of a push here, as we see this base is going to get taken down rather quickly. No additional armor upgrades at all. You can see the Corruptors are right there, right behind. And there you have it. All the Vikings simply retreating, even with 2-0 upgrades, unable to go up against these Corruptors. Alright, what's going to be happening next? Thors, sensor towers, here we go. Broodlords, Corruptors, Vikings trying to get in some easy free shots. And what is happening here? Alright, the Corruptors getting in some shots, both sides doing a little bit of that hit and run tactic. But the Broodlords have just been able to push in during all this time. There is a fungal growth. And with that fungal growth, double fungal growth, maybe even perhaps triple fungal growth at this point, all of those Vikings will get taken down. The Broodlord count simply too massive, too many Corruptors and Infestors to really do anything else. The rest of those Vikings will be forced to pull back here in just a second. And with that, these Broodlords are going to shut down and perhaps just destroy all the production. Terran going to lose 3 straight games in this series. A rather one-sided matchup between these two players. Alright, Broodlord still swarming around through the top. It looks as though the Terran player trying to figure out what went wrong in this series. Vikings now cleaning up some of these Broodlords. And what is this? Where are the Corruptors? The Corruptors, 17 Corruptors are somewhere on the field. They are just not escorting these Broodlords. And that is going to be a problem. 93 to 81. Yeah, there are some needless losses here, and I believe at this point Zerg just feels that he has such the superior army and the superior composition in terms of bases and tech that he doesn't really need to worry about it. Production buildings are all now getting taken down. Siege tanks, Hellions doing a little bit of a last stand here. This last stand not going to stand for very long. Infested Terrans now continuing this push. Corruptors have finally arrived. More Broodlords now morphing into the field. And as we sit at 186, there it is the GG. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it.